On my birthday, my son and his wife kicked me out of the house, but I never imagined the coldest moment of my life would come wrapped in balloons, a half-finished cake, and the faint smell of candles that had barely burned. I had just stood up from the dining chair, smiling quietly at the two people I had spent a lifetime providing for, when my son suddenly reached for my coat, not to help me put it on, but to shove it into my hands. There was no warning, no fight, no argument building up. Just a sudden change in the air, the kind that makes your skin tighten before your mind catches up. His wife stood beside him, arms crossed, eyes sharp, tracking every movement like she had been waiting for this moment. My son didn't shout. That would have hurt less. Instead, he said it in a flat, practiced tone like he'd rehearsed it. "We need space. You can't stay here anymore." The room felt too still, too fragile, as if one wrong breath would make everything shatter. I looked at him carefully, searching his face for any trace of hesitation, any flicker of guilt. I found none. His expression stayed cold, almost relieved, as if finally doing something that had annoyed him for years. I didn't speak. Not right away. Silence has always been my companion, especially when pain cuts too deep to form words. His wife stepped closer, her voice soft but poisonous. "Don't make this dramatic. You'll manage. You always do." She said it like I was a burden, like the house I had bought, the life I had built, the sacrifices I had made were nothing more than temporary favors. My hands trembled slightly, not from age but from the sudden, brutal humiliation of being dismissed on the day I should have felt most loved. I scanned the room, the framed memories on the hallway walls, the furniture I had paid for, the quiet corners where my son once played with toy cars at my feet. All of it blurred as the reality set in. They wanted me gone. Not later. Not tomorrow. Now. My son walked to the door and opened it wide. A gesture that felt like a knife. A gesture that cut deeper than any scream. No neighbor looked. No friend called. No one knew that this old man, holding his coat and cane, was being pushed out like an unwanted package left on a doorstep. I stepped out. The air outside was colder than I expected, biting into my skin, hollowing out my chest. Behind me, the door shut not with anger, but with finality. Like closing a chapter they believed I no longer belonged in. I stood there for a long moment, the quiet street stretching out before me. My birthday candle smoke still lingered in my clothes, mixed with the sting of rejection. Every breath hurt. Every memory felt heavier. But beneath that pain, something else stirred slowly, steadily, like an old machine waking after years of stillness. A thought. A remembering. A power they forgot I held, because while they pushed me out of the home I'd built, they didn't know about the one thing I had built even more carefully, quietly, legally, smartly. My last document. The one that would change everything. The one they had no idea existed. And as I walked down the sidewalk, head lowered but heart steadying itself, I already knew. They had just created the kind of nightmare you can't wake up from, and I wasn't going to stop it. I had simply planned too well. I walked for nearly an hour before the cold began to settle into my bones. The night had an unusual stillness to it, an emptiness that made each step echo in my mind far louder than it did on the pavement. I passed houses with porch lights glowing, families visible through windows, people clinking glasses, laughing, carrying plates to tables. Each one felt like a reminder of what had just happened, as if the world was quietly contrasting what they had with what I had lost in a single moment. Finally stopped beneath an old street lamp that flickered every few seconds. I eased myself onto a bench, my hands resting over my coat, the one my son shoved at me just before he closed the door. I stared at the pavement, at the faint cracks that ran in crooked lines, thinking how strange it felt to be 83 years old and suddenly homeless. On my own birthday. My breath came out in soft clouds. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just listened to the cars passing in the distance, to a dog barking somewhere blocks away, to the hollow thud of my own heart settling into the shock. Then, slowly, the numbness peeled back, layer by layer, revealing something quieter. Not anger. Not even heartbreak. Just a steady, simmering clarity. People think old age makes you weak. But old age teaches you patience, and patience builds plans. I reached into my inner coat pocket, where the familiar cold touch of a small key pressed into my fingers. I had carried that key for 20 years. A key to a drawer in a downtown law office. A drawer I had filled long before my son married the woman who now had him wrapped in her influence. Like silk around a blade, I had built everything with care. Every dollar, every document, every protection for the future, and I had prepared for every possible betrayal. Except emotional one. Still, preparation is preparation. I rose from the bench and walked toward the bus stop. The night bus arrived with only 3 passengers, an old man asleep, a young woman scrolling through her phone, and a teenager staring out the window as though he carried an invisible weight. I sat down slowly, clutching the metal bar for balance. The bus hummed quietly as it moved, streetlights sliding across the windows like faint memories passing by. I got off near the city's older district. The law office was dark at this hour, but I didn't need to go inside yet. Instead, I continued to a small storage unit I had been renting for years. People always assume storage units hold leftover furniture or forgotten holiday decorations. Mine held something far more valuable, my foresight. Inside the dimly lit unit, my breath caught in the cold air. The walls were lined with labeled boxes, documents, old ledgers, property files, receipts, photographs. But in the far corner sat the most important box of all, an old wooden file case, carved with my initials decades ago. I lifted it with both hands, feeling the weight of years settle into my palms. When I opened the lid, the faint smell of parchment and old ink rose to meet me. Right there, under a layer of protective sleeves, sat the document I had prepared on a quiet autumn morning 20 years earlier. The power it held hadn't faded. Not one bit. It was a document that shaped everything. Who owned what? Who had authority? Who could claim a single brick of the life I built? And my son had no idea that everything he assumed was his wasn't. I sat down on a small metal stool and let the fluorescent light illuminate the pages. The language was firm, clear, irreversible. I had rewritten the entire estate structure long before my son ever imagined I might be dependent on him. A lifetime of work had been placed under a trust designed to activate only under specific conditions. One of those conditions? Mistreatment, abandonment, neglect of the benefactor. And tonight, he had triggered every one of them. I closed the box gently and sat there for several minutes, letting a flood of mixed emotions pass through me. I wasn't proud of this moment. I wasn't enjoying any of it. If anything, I felt a deep ache that reached inside my ribs, settling somewhere between sorrow and acceptance. I didn't want revenge. If I had wanted revenge, I would have shouted back at him on the doorstep. If I had wanted revenge, I would have cursed him, fought him, begged him to reconsider. But instead, I walked away. Because what I had built wasn't revenge. It was protection, a quiet, calculated shield forged from decades of sacrifice and foresight. When the morning sun finally began to push its way through the clouds, I arrived at my lawyer's office. The man who greeted me had aged too, his shoulders slightly stooped. His hair thinner, but his eyes were still sharp enough to cut through any pretense. I had a feeling this day would come, he murmured as he unlocked his door. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He opened the drawer using the twin key to mine. The metallic click felt like a final lock sliding into place. He removed the original sealed envelope, looked up at me, and spoke with a quiet gravity. This is going to alter everything. I know, I replied. He made it clear I meant nothing. Now he'll learn what that costs. The lawyer prepared the documents, reviewing each line with meticulous care. After nearly an hour, He placed them into a new courier envelope and sealed it with an embossed stamp. "It will go out tomorrow morning," he said. Tomorrow morning. When my son would wake in the home I had bought, beside the woman who pushed me out, under the roof they believed they owned, he would open a letter that would pull the ground from under his feet, because cruelty has consequences, and neglect has a price. As I stepped out into the daylight, a strange calm settled over me, not satisfaction, not victory, just the steady understanding that life had moved into the next chapter, and that by sunrise, my last document would begin rewriting his entire world. The house was wrapped in an unnatural silence, a silence so thick, it felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I stepped across the porch I once repaired with my own hands, opened the unlocked door, and slipped into the hallway. The air inside carried a tension I could feel on my skin, the kind of tension that only forms when guilt is waiting to be discovered. The lights were dim, casting long shadows along the wooden floor, and every step I took felt like walking deeper into a secret they hoped would stay buried. As I moved closer to the living room, voices leaked into the hallway, hushed, frantic, sharp. My son's wife, Marissa, was pacing in short, violent strides, clutching her phone so tightly her knuckles were white. Her breathing was shallow, panicked. She was trying to whisper, but her fear kept raising her voice. "You shouldn't have done it like that," she snapped. "You left him out there like he was a useless stray. People saw him outside. What if someone reports it?" My son's voice followed, cold, controlled, and unrecognizable from the boy I raised. "He's old. Nobody reports an old man sitting outside. They think it's normal." He spoke so casually, as if throwing me out of the house on my birthday was a minor misstep, not the cruel betrayal it truly was. He continued, tone firm. "Besides, he won't last long on his own. Once he's gone, everything transfers to us automatically." My heart tightened as if a fist had closed around it, squeezing slowly. The pain wasn't just emotional, it was physical. I felt older in that moment, not because of age, but because of the weight of realizing how deeply my son's greed had hollowed him out. The blood left my face, but I kept quiet. I needed to hear everything. Marissa stopped pacing and slammed a folder onto the table. The sound echoed through the house like a crack of thunder. "You don't understand," she hissed. "If the lawyer checks the paperwork again, if he finds out about the clause, if he finds out your father changed the ownership, he won't." My son cut her off sharply. "He trusts us, and the old man won't tell him anything. He's weak, confused. He probably forgot half the document anyway." I felt the sting of those words, but I also felt something else in Ember, faint but alive. Strength, that document. The one they never bothered to read thoroughly. The one that protected everything I built. The one they assumed transferred everything to them. They had no idea what was really inside it. And now they were standing in their own trap. I stepped toward the living room entrance, shadows hiding me for a moment longer. Their argument grew louder as their fear grew sharper. Marissa held her head in her hands, muttering, "If he talks, if he remembers, if anything leaks, our whole plan falls apart." My son rubbed his temples, pacing now too, frustration seeping into every movement. "Just calm down. He's not coming back inside. He's not strong enough to confront us. He's probably, that's enough." My voice cut through the room like a blade. Both of them jolted violently, spinning around as if they'd seen a ghost. Marissa's eyes widened in horror. My son froze mid-step, his mouth half open, the color draining from his face so fast it looked as if he'd turned to stone. I stepped fully into the light, holding up the one thing they feared most. The last document. The folder in my hand seemed to glow under the lamp, because to them, it wasn't paper. It was the knife hovering above their carefully constructed lie. How did you get inside?" My son stuttered, voice barely escaping his throat. "I built this house," I said calmly. "Every corner, Every door, every lock. Did you really think I didn't know how to enter my own home? Marissa stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the edge of the carpet. She pointed a trembling finger at the document. You can't use that. You don't have the right. You're old, I finished for her, my tone soft but sharp enough to cut. Yes, old, but not blind, not confused, and certainly not weak. My son rushed forward, trying to grab my arm. Dad, please, listen, you're taking this the wrong way. We were stressed. Things came out wrong. She didn't mean. I pulled my arm away slowly, deliberately, as if separating myself from years of quiet disappointment. His hand hovered in the air, helpless, trembling. You kicked me out on my 83rd birthday, I said, my voice steady though my chest ached. You left me outside like I was nothing, like I didn't raise you, like I didn't build everything you stand on. Marissa stepped forward, hands clasped, tears forming not of guilt but of fear. Please, don't do this. We can fix things, we can talk. I placed the document gently on the table between us. The sound of it touching the wood echoed like a judge's gavel. This, I said quietly, is the nightmare you created. And trust me, nothing you fear has even started yet. Their faces collapsed, fear replacing arrogance, panic replacing cruelty. And for the first time in many years, I saw my son clearly. Not as my child, but as a man who had chosen greed over blood. And now, they were about to learn the cost. I sit across from them in the quiet room, my hands resting on the table, the same hands that once held my son when he was small, the same hands that packed his lunches, fixed his broken toys, held him steady when he was learning to walk. Now those hands hold the envelope he never knew existed. He keeps glancing at it, his breathing uneven, as if the paper itself carries a storm he can already feel blowing toward him. His wife stands beside him, arms crossed but slowly uncrossing, her confidence slipping as the silence stretches. I slide the envelope forward gently, almost like I'm offering a fragile truth instead of a blade that might cut him in ways he never expected. This, I say softly, is the document I made the year you turned 11. He blinks at me, confused, but I can see the attempt he makes to hide his fear. His wife leans in, trying to catch a glimpse, her curiosity turning into tension. He opens it with hands that tremble. I see his eyes scan the first lines, then freeze. The color drains from his face, slowly, like warm water leaving a bath until only cold remains. He reads again, slower this time. I know the moment he reaches the sentence that breaks him. His lips part, but no sound comes out. His wife grabs the paper from him, confused, and when her eyes hit the same words, she steps back as if the truth burned her fingers. You're not my father? He whispers out, his voice cracks in the middle, a sound I haven't heard since he was a little boy scared after a bad dream. I steady my breath. You were left at the hospital doors, I say softly. Your biological parents. They walked away. No note, no name, nothing. His knees weaken. He lowers himself into the chair like he can't trust the ground anymore. His wife stares at the document, then at him, then at me, her expression shifting from shock to something I can only describe as realization. The foundation she thought she stood on, his name, his lineage, his pride, begins to crumble beneath her. I see it in her posture, in her eyes. She had married what she believed was a man from a strong family, a stable legacy, a good name. Now she sees the truth she never expected. You adopted me, he says, his voice small. You never told me. You were abandoned, I reply gently. And I didn't want you to grow up feeling unwanted. I made a promise in that moment that I would never let you feel less than any child. So I signed papers. I gave you my name. I carried every responsibility with pride. I raised you like you were my own blood. He swallows hard, staring at the paper with tears forming in the corners of his eyes. His wife finally looks at him with something unfamiliar, fear, maybe. maybe disappointment. Maybe the sudden understanding that the man she mocked, belittled, and threatened to throw away was never hers to begin with, not in the way she assumed. She turns away, her hands shaking. She's seeing her life with him differently now. No status, no special lineage, nothing inherited. Just a man she picked because she thought his family had something she could use. I lean back slightly, feeling the weight of years settling into their rightful place. I never wanted you to know this way, I say quietly. But you pushed me to a point where you left me no choice. He wipes his face roughly. I didn't know. Dad, I didn't know. The word dad leaves his mouth differently this time. Fragile, breaking, desperate. Not entitlement, not arrogance. Just a boy realizing the man he rejected was the only person who ever fought for him. I stand slowly. I gave you my life, I tell him. And you threw me out on my 83rd birthday without even asking what you meant to me. His shoulders crumble inward. He covers his face. His wife backs up another step, like she's watching her strategy dissolve into dust. I'm sorry, he whispers. I'm so sorry, Dad. I nod gently, not harsh, not angry, just tired. I'm not here to punish you, I say. This isn't revenge. This is truth. And truth has a way of showing us who we really are. He lowers his hands and looks at me with an expression I haven't seen since he was a child. The look of someone who finally understands what love costs. And what it gives. You asked why that document was your nightmare, I say softly. It's because now you know exactly who loved you. And exactly who didn't. His tears fall silently. His wife doesn't touch him. She pulls her purse to her side gently, as if preparing to leave, the first fracture in their perfect facade. I step toward the door. You can rebuild from this, I tell him, but you have to choose the kind of man you want to be. Not the one she pushed you into, and not the one you pretended to be. He nods, quietly broken, holding the document like it's both a wound and a lifeline.